Welcome to the Burrillville School Committee regular meeting, July 12th, 2016, 6:30, Burrillville High School Media Center, 425 East Avenue, Harrisville, Rhode Island. Members present, all. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Recognition, Burrillville High School lacrosse team. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please stand up in the front here? Anyone from the lacrosse team that is here?
Lacrosse.
Yeah.
I got one. One was my student.
Yeah, just line up. You can look towards us to start. That'd be great. Appreciate it.
Did you do that playing lacrosse?
Thank you. Well, we're here tonight to recognize the boys lacrosse team for, they went 15-0 in the regular season, champions of the Division III North, and they ended the season Division III state champions with a final record of 18-0. That's amazing. But what this committee finds amazing is a letter that we received from another coach from PCD St. Raphael in a game that you guys had with them. As a coach, he said he's been coaching lacrosse for 21 years, and as a coach, he's never seen a team ever show more sportsmanship and respect like the Burrillville PCD St. Raphael team did this afternoon. He wants to extend his gratitude and well wishes to the head coach, assistant coaches, athletic director, and the complete school administration on what an outstanding, polite team you have. That means as much, if not more, than your winning record to this committee. So thank you guys very much, and on behalf of the Burrillville School Committee, congratulations. This certificate is awarded to the Burrillville Boys Lacrosse Team, 2016 Rhode Island State Division III North Lacrosse Champions. Thank you.
Nice job. Nice job. Congratulations.
Great job.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Nice job, guys. Great, super. Thank you very much.
Didn't you win that sportsman?
We did.
You did a couple of years in a row, right?
Hockey was twice in a row, but lacrosse is not for us.
It's great. Great job, boys.
Make our town look good.
Great job. Great job. Great job.
Congratulations.
Great job. Take care of yourself.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Great student. We don't get old.
One of my
Just have-
favorites.
We don't get old.
I would like to mention that they also won the Sportsmanship Award. Next would be the Burrillville High School Civics Club flagpole donation. Mr. Trank.
Well, actually, two separate things. I didn't bring the flagpole because it's 20 feet long. But I'm Ray Trank, commander of Post 88 American Legion, and we're donating a 20-foot flagpole and flag to the Ski Carter Diamond. And we'll get that pole to the facilities manager. Baseball coach has an idea where he wants to put it to make that diamond, and it's the Eccleston Field and the Ski Carter Diamond. So we have that donation we're making. And we also want to recognize the Burrillville High School Civics Club. We have an award for them. The Civics Club called me, and they said, we want to put flags up. And yeah, all right. Yeah, that's cool. And so we talked about it for a couple of times, and what a fantastic job the Burrillville High School Civics Club did. They made individual named little banners that flew off the flags for the 58 killed in action people from World War I, II, and Vietnam. and then put them into berm for Memorial Day, and did a great job. And they're also out front now. They're in the high school memorial. You can see them out there now. And we decided that we like that so much that next year we're going to buy dog tags for each of the 58 people. So we thought that was great. And then we have individual flyer certificates for the 5 kids that did it, who are Julia Simpson, Nicole Ethier, Austin Rushworth, Sierra Miller, and Julia Boudreau. So congratulations to them, they did a great job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Thanks, Ray.
Thanks, Ray.
And this is for you. Next item, consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda consisting of the regular meeting dated June 14th, 2016, and to approve the 2015-16 school warrant number 12 for the month of June dated July 12th, 2016, for a grand total expenditure of $3,265,397.31, and to award the bid for the purchase of 500 Chromebooks to CDW-G, Vernon Hills, Illinois, in the amount of $93,700.
There's an additional bid, Mr. Kamara.
I'm sorry?
Mr. Kamajan, do we have received an additional bid at your
Oh, I'm
seat this
sorry.
evening when you arrive?
Oh, okay.
And if we could
All right,
ask
we'll
you to
also,
add that to your...
okay, we'll also add the ice rink, let's see, the purchase of a synthetic ice surface to Ice Rink Engineering and Manufacturing LLC, Greenville, South Carolina, for a total of $5,692.41.
Second.
Sorry about that.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Allen?
Mr. Chairman, I just would like to point out one item within this I would have an objection to. You've been familiar with my objections to the Chromebook technology plan as presented, so if there's a way to, abstract from just that one item, and thank you.
Anyone
Mr. Chair,
else?
I can't vote to approve the minutes from last month's meeting because I wasn't present, so I can abstain from that vote as well, but just them.
Thank you.
One
Any vote?
question? What is a synthetic ice surface?
Dave?
It's a synthetic, hard surface that you can actually skate on.
Where is it used?
It's gonna be up in the mezzanine, so when we don't have ice, the team will practice. There's a goalie crease, goalie net area, and they'll be actually practicing shooting pucks on the goalie.
So it's a part of the rink, but it's not where the ice is?
Right.
Oh, thank you.
Anyone else? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next item, presentation to the public, presentation by the public to the school committee on this evening. Anyone wishing to speak in public comment, please stand at the podium and state your name and address. Hearing none. Item 6, personnel, appointments, leave of absence, retirements, resignations.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the resignation reluctantly of Stephanie Roberge Barney, grade 5, William L. Callahan, effective 7/1, I believe that's 16.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion to approve the academic summer school appointments, Thomas Caparella, mathematics, $1,000 per course contingent upon enrollment, and David Mellor, mathematics, $1,000 per course contingent upon enrollment.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Yes, one comment.
Dr. Plata has a comment.
You may not know, but there was a ruling by the court that school districts could no longer charge students for summer school, but I decided to go forward with summer school this summer because we already had kids enrolled, and I didn't think it was fair to those students who needed those classes. So we managed to go through the budget and find some money in the budget to support the summer school program, but it's an issue that we'll have to talk about going forward next school year. The ruling came too late for us to really remove the program for the kids. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, motion to approve appointments of, first, Robert Barrows, grade 5, 1 year only. William L. Callahan, it's a voluntary transfer. Lisa Scotty Johnson, special education at Burrillville High School, voluntary transfer. Kevin Stockwell, technology at Burrillville High School, voluntary transfer. Holly St. Pierre, grade 4, 1 year only. William L. Callahan, step 2. Ian Urquhart, behavioral specialist at Burrillville Middle School, $30 per hour. Amanda Nanny, grade 5, 1 year only, Stair Farm Elementary, step 1. Corrine Lindback, Title I Math Intervention Specialist at the A.T. Levy School, 10 hours a week, 10 hours a week up to 30 weeks at $50 an hour. Diane LeBrun, Principal's Assistant, 2016-17 at Callahan School, $1,000. Samantha Stanton, Social Studies, Burrillville High School, Step 4. Amanda Lemos, World Language, Burrillville High School, Step 1. Timothy Milosauskas, Principal at A.T. Levy School, $90,405. And Mitchell Canoia, Assistant Principal, Burrillville High School, $93,556.
Second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion?
Two discussions. As far as the behavior specialist goes, I know this person was in the middle school last year, but I have questions about it. Could it also be considered, as we've had in the past, a bodyguard? No, just a person?
Now, they have special training in dealing with overt behavior with students.
Well,
No,
that's
it's
how
not.
our bodyguard was, what he did. But that's what we called him anyway, sorry about that. And also, what's a TCI teacher? That was in his resume.
Yeah, therapeutic
Therapeutic
classroom.
classroom intervention. And does this person work in conjunction with the teacher and, or, like, who would be the person that would be
The
above
teacher-
that person?
The teacher would directly supervise.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. The other question is, as far as the principal of ATL, I have a concern about the fact that we're not hiring from within. So as a matter of principle, I will vote nay.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions?
I just had a question, if someone local had applied.
I think it's too late for us to know
Oh, I
that.
know. Just to-
The process is done, and this is the superintendent's choice and the principal's choice. And if I could I have the new principal at ATL and the new assistant principal at ATL please stand so we can be recognized?
BHS.
BHS, not ATL.
BHS, right? Thank you. Thank you.
Principal? He's the principal.
Principal,
How about the assistant principal?
not here.
Yes, assistant principal of the high school.
Where?
He's right, he's sitting right in the back next to the other principal.
Okay.
That's all. He's here.
Mitchell Canoyer? That was my fault. The assistant principal. Thank you for that. Okay, so I have a motion and a second. I have a motion from Mike, I'm assuming, on the appointments.
And it's been seconded.
I have a second. We have discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? So we have just Sylvia that will be opposed to the high school, and that's it. Okay, great. Next item, old business. Fiscal year 16 ESD budget update.
Motion to open.
Open?
Motion to open in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No action is needed, we're still in the process of closing the year end. So I can tell you that, we will end the year with a surplus, it's looking very favorable at this point.
Great. Next item, fiscal year 16 rink budget update.
Motion to open?
Second.
Motion open, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No action is required. Thank you. Superintendent's report.
Motion to open?
Second.
Second.
Motion open and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The last organizational chart was kind of very broad and spaced out. What I did was condense the chart to show you directly who is responsible to whom, right through up into the school committee with legal counsel. There is some overlap in some of these positions, obviously, where the Director of Instruction and Curriculum also oversees the support staff along with the Director of Pupil Personnel Services. We added to the new chart that the Director oversees, the Director of Facilities oversees the rink director oversees the rink coordinator, and we condensed all the positions under the Director of Pupil Personnel Services instead of listing them all separately. So there's no new information there. It's just basically information that was condensed to show you a flow chart that hopefully makes more sense to you.
Question?
You want to receive and file motion?
You can approve it. We can put it in the policy.
I'll accept them up to receive and file.
So moved?
Second.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Mr. Allen?
There's, if I'm not mistaken, there's a little bit of a change. I know you outlined those few changes. Ann was kind enough to send me the original chart, and it didn't come through clearly, and I should have maybe asked this, but Director of Instruction and Curriculum is now, in terms of the flow chart, ahead of the principal and assistant principals in the new chart. Is that different than the original chart where?
No, in the old chart, it was listed, it didn't list oversight of principals and assistant principals. In the new chart, obviously, it does list that. Principals and the assistant principals report to the Director of Instruction and Curriculum.
Okay, and they had been doing that in the past, it just wasn't sort of in that
Yes.
chart that way?
That has been the past practice, but it was not reflected in the chart.
Okay, 'cause I was just curious as to if there was something prompting you to make that change, but if it historically
No,
was the...
there's no change.
Yeah,
It
so it's
just was
the way
never
it's been.
recorded as such. Now it's recorded as such.
Okay,
So anyone new coming into the district will know that.
fair enough. Okay, thank you.
Question? Two?
Yes, Ms. Cynthia?
So in essence, the Director of Instruction, Curriculum, and Assessment is acting as an assistant superintendent?
Well, I'm not going to say assistant superintendent because that person would directly oversee also the Director of Pupil Personnel Services and the Director of Technology and the Director of Facilities, and that's not the case.
Okay, so in terms of instruction, curriculum, and assessment, that person is overseeing the principals and assistant principals?
Correct.
If so, if needed, could the principals go to you?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely.
The other question I have is the physical therapist with principals, I see. What does that mean, with principals? Right here in this,
The Director of Pupil Personnel Services will work with the principal in terms of oversight and responsibility for those individuals.
okay,
They'll work together.
okay, thank you.
Welcome. Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor to receive and file?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Hearing none. Administrator reports, we kind of give the administrators a break during the summer, so we won't be receiving any of those this month. Item 10th, reports of school committee subcommittees. I think we have any at all for this month. We have no reports of subcommittees this month. Correspondence, communications. I just have one thing. Front page, when soccer call, our own Miss Alex Leclerc She was recognized by the Rhode Island Association of School Committees for a Leadership Academy that she completed, so I'd like to thank her for that, and also would like to thank you for your enthusiasm and commitment to this committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
New business. Approve Burrillville Middle School overnight field trip request.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion?
These two people have transferred to the high school? How does that work?
Two other people will be taking on that responsibility. I think, according to Ms. Rabideau, I think Eric Tupper and, who was the other one, Rachel?
Karen Hundley.
Those two individual teachers now at least will assume that responsibility, and that could be subject to change.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Can I just make a comment? I just think it's an awesome trip, and I wish I got to go as an 8th grader, because I read through this information, I'm like, oh my goodness, I want to go. So I think it's awesome, and I thank you all for coordinating it. I know the kids have a great time, so thank you.
Thank you.
Very good.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next item, school committee appointment to interview teams. Dr. Pilata, can you explain this item?
Yeah, there's been a past practice by the school committee to sit in on interviews for administrators. And at times, it's very difficult for the screening team to select individuals from the school committee. So I suggested to the chair that he develop a list so the screening team could go by a list. So if it's Josh, Dot, and Sylvia, and Josh is next in line, then the screening team just selects Josh, and then you go to the next person, the next person, the next person, and you just rotate that cycle. That way the screening teams don't have to choose who's going to be selected to serve on a screening team. I think it's the only fair way to do it. Many times they ask me who should serve, and it's a very difficult decision because you all have different backgrounds, and I try to make a selection where your background matches up to the interview, the person being interviewed. So I suggested that to the chairman, and chairman thought it was a reasonable idea. So pretty much.
And for those of you that have sat with the interview team, you know that, you're there to listen and make sure everything is going according to our school committee's plan and wishes, but you don't get to comment or actually vote on that person, so, and you've been on it, that you know that, so you are just there to sit and pay attention and watch how the process plays out, but not particularly there to vote on the person they're interviewing or to ask that person questions.
They used to be able to vote before. It wasn't that they were hiring the person, they just put their vote, their numbers counted, put it that way. They were only one of 7, so they couldn't make the final decision, and then ultimately that person or whoever would be then brought up before the superintendent. So at that time, they didn't think there was any kind of a conflict. I don't know how that's changed, but that's how it used to.
Well, if they were one of 7, they could be a dividing vote.
We use a numerical system when we rank, but I think it's always been an open question whether or not a school committee person could rank and then sit and make a decision on the appointment. That may or may not be a conflict, but if you want me to get something from the attorney, I'd be happy to do that.
I'd like you to do that.
I think that would be best, too.
I would think so.
Okay, I'll do that.
Because I'm sure members of the committee, in sitting and listening to members of the selection committee discuss the applicant, that they themselves may have questions that may be of importance that maybe one of the members might not have thought of. And maybe of input. So if I can see us getting involved in the conversations, but I also think it's probably a good idea not to make a final vote, let the committee itself, lest the school committee member make the final vote on who they would like to be part of that.
If you got enough people, I don't see how, I mean, if it was 4 people in the school, you know, we voted, that'd be one thing, but, I mean, I know the one that I went to, it was like 11 people in that.
Yeah.
So if you're one of 11 people, you're not influencing anything unduly, I wouldn't think.
Okay, so,
But if you're gonna sit there, I mean, why not at least get, I mean, if we're not breaking any laws, I don't see why it wouldn't be something that you can comment or vote on.
so at minimum, I'll entertain a motion so that we can table it and send it to legal.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Just one other maybe
No?
procedural point to think of, in terms of the, if we adopted that rotating schedule, what the procedure might be for someone who couldn't make it to that meeting. Would it, the next person, but then would they be able to then attend at the following, or they have to wait for the full rotation? You know, just as terms of a procedural thought, you know, if that comes up.
Yeah, we'll ask the legal about that too.
Thank you.
Make sure that everybody's informed.
Just keep going down the rotation.
Okay.
Just keep going.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Hearing none. Next item, approved job description, behavioral therapist.
Motion to approve as presented by the superintendent, barring any question.
Second.
Motion and a second, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next item, transgender policy and protocol.
Motion to open?
Second.
Motion open and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Discussion?
I just had one question. Is the legislature going to provide any sensitivity training for like the principals or other personnel such as coaches and even bus drivers in this area?
No, we'd have to provide that. It's a ride regulation. It's a combination of a federal policy and state policy through ride. We've not come across anything where they would provide training. We certainly will make every effort to provide the training necessary. Administrators are somewhat sensitive to this issue right now, but they don't have the guidance that they need in terms of being confronted with a problem. So at least this provides some guidance for them. But every case is an individual case, and every case can be challenged at any time by anyone. But at least we'll have a policy and a protocol to guide the school administrators. And a lot of this comes from federal regulations and Title IX and other related transgender issues, publications.
It seems quite involved, and you did a nice job. I want to commend putting this together, you and his office. It seems to have covered a lot of ground, barring the typos that we have to send it back to Ben, I think, and have him.
We,
We blame his staff, not him.
it's very detailed in as much as high school kids need to be dealt with differently than elementary kids.
Right.
Even to notice of parents. So I
Oh,
think if you had the opportunity to take a look at it, it's very sensitive in nature. And it may or may not cost us a little bit of money to make some accommodations within the schools for this issue.
Yeah, because that was one of the questions, was like the bathrooms, would now the handicapped families / transgender be something that we would have to do, or provide a certain
I think-
area of a bathroom, or?
once you approve the policy, then I'll have Mr. Fonts review the buildings to see what we need and what's necessary to incorporate the policy.
Any other questions? Mr. Allen?
Just a couple of points. I spent a little bit of time going through this, and my initial point always goes back to the same issue I've had with Common Core and federal mandates. The federal government has no constitutional authority to have any influence in education, so it's all the money thing. So we're doing a lot of this based on the premise that we're going to continue to accept money from the federal government. But in terms of practical aspects of this policy, I just try and look at it from a standpoint of, how do we, as a town, just function in terms of accommodating these things. And I made a few notes, and I think it's worth bringing up and just having the discussion so that we keep it in our mind. There's a couple of conflicts, I think, within the policy itself. It says there's no formal procedure for criteria to validate someone who's changing their gender identity. And it says it's, based on the school staff belief. Well, it seems a little bit, well, not a little bit, but very vague in terms of the staff. To me, a life-changing event such as this would probably warrant something a little bit more substantiated, in my opinion, that maybe it's a psychological analysis perhaps by a trained person who could guide all of us in determining if this is indeed a case where this student has indeed, making that sort of transition. Certainly looking at it from an adolescent perspective for a younger child in elementary school, to me seems a little premature. Again, I'm not an expert, but, they're not even perhaps going through puberty yet, and we're thinking about helping them transition. So there's a few things in here that I see that may present a problem for me to approve the plan. And then it goes on to talk about FERPA, the Federal Education Rights and Privacy, and I know that has been gutted. And when it says you have to have an educational interest to gain access to personal information, that threshold is really low. It used to be a fairly high threshold. That's not the case anymore. So if this information falls into the hands of Rhode Island Department of Education, they're allowed to share it with people who have outside interests. And so there are a number of layers in this that present a concern for me, that I think establishing a policy, the way it's written, seems to open potentially more issues for us than not having one at all. And I again look to the bathroom policy. If we're dealing with making sure that students are comfortable, which is essentially what it is, we want to make sure everyone's comfortable in any changing facility, any bathroom facility. If that's the threshold that everyone has to be comfortable, we have to treat everyone as an individual. So if allowing somebody to enter a bathroom that may be going through this transition makes somebody else uncomfortable, that's another issue that has to be dealt with. And then having the parent sort of as a secondary in the high school setting is also a concern, that what might be happening in a school setting on something so sensitive when a child can't make that decision for themselves until the age of majority, the age of 18. In my opinion, that's a huge issue for them to make that decision before that they reach 18. So that's just kind of a quick analysis that I thought was worth presenting to you guys, and I think we should really be careful, before we just adopt a policy that seems to leave a lot of vague areas open.
Well, if I could just, comment on that, I think that the behavioral specialist is part of the staff they're talking about, so I think there is going to be a professional in this area that's part of the staff that they're talking about that will be dealing with this student. And we're not breaking new ground here, as you know. There's districts in the state that have already dealt with this, are dealing with this, so the language in most of this is in effect in other districts. And states have improper claim laws, so for a student, I know my concern would be for a student with an improper claim of transgender issues or whatever. it might be subject to, but the states have improper claim laws, so, and the disciplinary action is not a simple one. It's quite severe, so as I read this, these are some of the things that I was thinking about, to kind of make it more palatable, because I think it's something that we're all gonna have to deal with, so if we don't wanna deal with it now, we, even continually tweaking this policy, I'm good with that too, but it is an issue we're gonna have to address at some point. I think now is a good starting point. Any other questions? Josh?
Just bouncing off what Don said, that, my major thing with this is, however, some transgender students do not want their parents to know about their transgender status, and these situations will be addressed on a case-by-case basis. I really have a problem as a parent, as not notifying a parent that we would be putting somebody in some sort of transgender status without notifying the parent of that status, if they're under the age of 18. I mean, somebody who's over the age of 18, I can see that, fine, no problem. But anybody under the age of 18, I really have a problem with that language there of not notifying a parent. And the second thing would be, in between the first and second reading, could we get a dollar sign of how much it's gonna cost in between this time and that time? Before we put the policy in place, I'd like to know what changes to our building would have to happen at that time, before I was to put this policy in place or vote on it.
Mr. Chair,
Gordon?
I think that we need to put a policy in place. And yes, it is going to cost us, but we need to have this policy in place. And I think as we move forward with this policy, we will be making some consensus changes. Families will definitely be involved. Our psychologists, behavioral study will be very much involved in these young students. And the one thing that concerns me is that we make such a big, huge issue of this, that we forget we are obligated to educate and keep them safe. And that's why this policy, yes, it needs to, there will come a time when we have to make some changes, but we need to educate the student and not spend a lot of time saying, this is a transgender student, how do we educate this student, blah, 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 blah. This is a student, like every other student. They need to be educated. This is a policy to help us move forward with a special need of a certain kind of student, period. I'm sorry. Thank you very much for listening.
Cynthia?
I kind of agree with everything that's been said. However, I also want to add that in the adolescence, it's a time of experimenting, trying things out. And I feel that there's a danger by accommodating to this extent. There may be a danger where we're influencing this individual into something that maybe that person didn't want. We're kind of, putting things there for the person to use, and it may not be what the person really wants, So I think it's kind of a dangerous thing sometimes.
Do we have further discussion? Dr. Gordon?
I realize this is a sensitive issue, but I think it's an issue we have to face because we have to equalize and balance how we treat students. And it's very difficult to be on one side and speak from the perspective that probably none of us have experienced. You've got to try to understand the experience from the student's perspective when they encounter this urge or whatever you want to call it. But just to assure you and put you at a comfort level, there are three major documents that this policy came from. And if you look at the three major documents, they all say the same thing. The first major document is guidance that RIDE gave us with transgender and gender non-performing students. And that's a whole policy that RIDE put out. National School Board Association, transgender students in schools, basically the same information that RIDE has put out. And then there's also language from the National Center on Transgender Equality. And if you take a look at all this, it's pretty much what these two documents said. So all these documents have been vetted, and they pretty much say the same thing, and they're pretty consistent with their language. Each case is individual. Naturally, to your point, Josh, is it automatic not to notify the parent? No, it's not. Certainly the parent needs to be part of the conversation. It's just that how it's handled between a high school student and an elementary student. They handle differently. So I think you can feel comfortable with the fact that the policy that's in front of you came from 3 major documents that experts put together, because this is an issue that's very real in schools today, that we have to deal with it. So we have one of two choices. If we don't have a policy and we have a situation and we're confronted with that situation, we have no guidance to go by. We will be held pretty liable for whatever happens. If you have a policy, at least you have some guidance. May not win the case, you know, that's always arbitrary in nature in terms of, because it's out of our hands, because somebody else is going to determine that. But at least we have some guidance to give the principals some guidance in terms of what they should be doing if they encounter a situation with a transgender student. And as Dot indicated, and Sylvia indicated, and Josh indicated, and everybody indicated, we're obligated to every student. We cannot isolate a segment of the population. So in order to do that, this was on my desk. I held it for 4 months until I got all the documents, and then sat with the attorney, and the attorney took another month or two to kind of review all the documents to make sure the language made sense. So I think you can feel pretty comfortable with the policy and the wording that you have in front of you. The safety net to all of this is if we encounter a situation and we go refer to the policy and there's something not there, you always have the option of adding it or deleting it going forward. That is always available. And I can certainly assure you that you know, if there's a 17-year-old student at the high school that's encountering this kind of a situation, will the parent be notified? Sure. These documents don't suggest that, because based on their experience, they have found out that it becomes a little bit more complicated when the parents get involved, because the parents have no knowledge of it, and they begin to treat the kids very differently. So it's very sensitive. It's a very sensitive issue going forward that I think we all need to be on the same page with and be comfortable with. But at this point in time, I can assure you, you can be comfortable with the language that you have in that policy. We did not create any of the language. The language came from the 3 major documents, and those people did their research. So after the second reading, if you approve it and we go forward, we'll get the cost, we'll see what that is. And if you want to make any changes going forward, that's certainly your option to do that.
So answering some of the committee concerns, would the committee entertain maybe getting some more information prior to the second reading, such as the cost involved, such as maybe if we could be supplied with the 3 major documents, that might help us to better understand what the professionals can explain to us a little
Not a problem.
more in detail. I'm just making a recommendation for the committee to move it forward and not have it stop at this point. I'd like to see it move forward, so I'll entertain a motion.
One other,
Do you have a
Question, one more?
We have one.
I have a question. I don't think I have a motion. Do I have a motion?
A motion and a second.
motion to open.
Yeah, you just had a motion to open.
Which we voted on.
The same, yeah?
Can we add something to this policy about sensitivity training?
You can add and delete anything you choose to by majority vote. that's a recommendation of amendment to this, that's fine.
Well, we'll see what we get for a motion and then see where that goes.
I have one more
Question?
quick
Sure.
question on the, you had brought up a point with respect to frivolous claims or something like that. There's
Yeah, it's
established law.
improper claim law.
Improper claim. Do you have some of that information so we could look at that as well, to see? I'm just curious to see what that,
Yeah, if that's a law, if that's a law in Rhode Island,
We have to do it.
I mean, I think I think it is. Am I correct with
Yeah,
that?
improper claim law, from what I understand it, is state law, but certainly we can,
If we can just get that law so that we could look at that as well, that would,
because it does tie in, if I may, just to the threshold for the validity of the claim. I kind of go back just briefly here. The school staff shall accept a student's assertion when there's consistent and uniform assertions or any other evidence that the student's gender identity is sincerely held. So those are the two sort of thresholds, but then it does make mention in bold letters that they may not consistently and uniformly assert that identity. So it's a little bit vague about, who makes the determination as a school, behavior, person in that capacity would be fine, I assume, but, and then also saying that, some of those things don't always display on a regular basis. So, I mean, just to eliminate some of that frivolous sort of,
Mr. Chair?
that's sort of what I'm thinking about.
I think what Mr. Allen is referring to, the legal authority, all of the laws on page 1, and even on quite a few of the laws throughout the policy are listed. And if we were to delve into some of those laws, a lot of what we're talking about are in those laws and will assist if any situation should arise. I mean, the Title IX, education amendments about, and the Equality, the Educational Rights and Privacy Act, all of these laws have within them a lot of the questions answered that we have asked this evening. So I think that what we should do is move forward and put this policy in place and begin to move forward. If we keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off, we should ask that the documents that Dr. Pilata presented this evening, that we all get a copy of, that we should get the cost of the changes. But we do need to move forward with this policy. We absolutely do need to do that.
Is that in the form of a motion?
I will make that in the form of a motion that we will approve policy P6439 related to transgender and gender non-conforming students as it is presented, and abstain from reading.
well, we're approving the first reading of it, right? We're not
first
actually
reading.
putting the policy into place.
Right,
Am I correct with that?
Just the first reading.
It's just the first reading. And what are we asking, with your amendment, what are you specifically asking Dr. Plata to get back to us
The
with?
3 documents that he
He had,
held
yep,
up,
okay.
and.
The money?
And then the
and-
cost.
State law, improper claim law.
The improper claim law, okay.
Cost.
Great.
Cost of changes.
And the cost
of
of
changes.
what possible changes we have to make in our schools. And that will
So I see.
come through facilities manager.
I would second that motion right there.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none. We'll move on to approve ice resurfacing machine resolution. Could I have an emotion?
Motion to, to approve, get back to my little notes here.
Ice resurfacing machine.
The ice resurfacing machine resolution, giving business director, the business manager, the authorization to sign the lease purchase agreement.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion? Mr. Fonce, this is a 5-year lease? Robin, 5-year lease? Okay. Mr. Allen?
And just one question, at the end of the lease, we will own that piece of equipment, is that, I understand that correctly? Okay.
Anyone else? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Hearing none. Approve obsolete equipment.
Motion to approve obsolete equipment list as presented.
Second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Committee on agenda items. No at this time. We do have a couple new teacher appointments this evening, and those new teachers, could you please stand and make yourself known to the committee? We have some new teachers. There's one. Anyone else willing to stand? None?
Samantha is a prime example. She subbed in the system for 4 years, and she finally got an appointment, so congratulations.
Great, thank you. Next item, pending issues, 5-year facilities assessment, building committee. That must be you, Dave.
The president worked on the middle school roof and the cafeteria at the high school. The cafeteria roof here is about 95% complete, and the middle school's probably about 75-80% complete.
Yeah, I can see they're doing a great job over there, working long hours, getting it done. Looks good. We look forward to seeing you next month with the presentation. September? Oh. We'll wait. Just a month. Football field lighting,
Nothing to report at this time.
no report. Item 15,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody.